Hello and welcome to Tonalist Painting by M. Francis McCarthy. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and the painting we are doing today is called Towards Dusk, and this is the 5x7 study for the larger piece that we'll be getting into next week, which I think is like 12x16, I'm guessing. Anyway, I did this painting fairly recently. It would be last month sometime, or maybe tail end of June. So yeah, last month would be June. So I don't think it was May, but fairly recently. And this is one of these ones that I'm doing a series of like 5 or 6 instead of my usual 10 or 12, and trying to focus and concentrate on doing larger paintings. I'm not doing any 8x10s or 8x8s, although God knows I have plenty of boards that size cut and prepared, so we'll see. At some point I may end up moving my studies up from 5x7, but I quite like the 5x7 size because it's small enough that it really keeps me from being able to do much detail at all. So I can it's kind of like a zoom out, really, if you think about it. It forces me to focus on the composition and colors, and with the, in recent years, or this last year, basically, I've started doing a second pass on the 5x7s, and so I incorporate a bit more texture as well, and as I've discussed, I've been texturizing recently. I've been texturizing my larger boards as but I've been texturizing my 5x7s for many years now. Although not really always taking advantage of that with dry brushing like I would do in the second pass. So I did a little bit of that on Friday this week, and that was, it was yesterday, Saturday, excuse me. This is Sunday here in New Zealand, and for those of you interested, this was the 24th of July. And as far as what I'm doing in the studio, I'm working on a new pass of paintings. Like I said, it's 6. I'm doing a pass of 6. I did the first color, I did drawings, first color on the 5x7s, and a couple of them I got a second color done, and I've done drawings for all the larger ones. I got the boards prepared with the gesso, and I finished doing drawings on Friday, so I'll be wrapping up those 5x7s next week, hopefully just in one day. I would hope, because a lot of times that second pass is not well, I always think it's not going to take me very long, but I'll sink 50 minutes into it quite often. For those of you that are curious, this painting we're doing today is probably sped up about 4 or 5 times faster than I did it, I think. Usually it takes me, I don't know, just painting time, total painting time, couple hours for one of these 5x7s, but there's a lot of other preparation and things that go into them, other than just the actual painting time. I've got my time I spent processing and getting my reference in line, and then I've got board prep, and then I've got my liquid stages that I do in between. After each painting is dry, I will go over it with a coat of liquid. I like this because it evens out the surface, so I can judge colors more accurately when I'm ready to go in again. And it has a final sort of coat that does the same thing. You get areas of paint that'll go quite matte and dull, and other areas are shiny, and the liquid just kind of obviates all that. This is one of the reasons a lot of artists have used varnish in the past, and I do have some varnish around. I like Gamasol when I do varnishing, but I really don't like to varnish unless I've actually sold a piece to somebody, because you never know. Sometimes I'll see something, I want to go in there and make a few swipes at it, and if there's varnish on it, everything I do would basically just be sitting on top of that layer of varnish, and it would just clean right off in the future. But it is good to varnish your paintings, I believe. I sort of see that predominantly as a responsibility of the person that purchases the painting, to protect their investment long term. Um, you know, this is a subject that artists and patrons can go back and forth on, but that's pretty much where I'm at on it. So yeah, the pass I'm working on right now, I'm feeling pretty good about things. I say the last pass I finished last week, or week before. There were 6, and there's 3 I'm really happy with. One that I'm, pretty happy with, and then 2 that are just okay. Just all right. Which is, I like to get a little bit average in that, but I'm learning more and more to trust my intuition and my instincts when I'm doing my photo prep. That's really the best time to decide whether I'm going to paint something or not. And I'll hear a voice in my head, not a voice like you're hearing right now. It's more of an intuition. It's more of an intuitive direction that says, I don't know if this is going to work out. But I've been quite adept at drowning that voice out at various points in the past, almost always to my regrets. So the nice thing about aging and getting more experienced is that you'll tend to remember that voice when it comes up and go, oh yeah, it was telling me another painting that wasn't quite. Generally, it's a compositional thing. I think almost every painting, it succeeds or it dies based on the composition, and there's a lot of intangible factors that go into that. And the other thing to, of course, keep in mind is the composition that might be working as a photograph may not work as a painting, because paintings really need to be a bit like baby food. That's the analogy I always use. You wouldn't feed a baby a steak, and you shouldn't feed your viewers as a painter the equivalent of a tough steak. You need to chew things up so it just goes right down their gullet, and no fuss, no muss, no bother. And really what I'm talking about is the process of viewing and perceiving reality. People aren't aware of this, many people, but we don't see an entire scene in focus. What we do is our eyes scan the scene, and we see a very small area in focus rapidly, and we create a detailed picture in our minds. And essentially all of us are working like painters all the time. The thing is that actually takes some work, and you don't want people to be looking at your painting that same way, or that to scan detail by detail and recreate the painting in their mind. What you want is for your painting to go right in, just zoom right in, and basically they can just take it all up in one gulp and appreciate it as it goes down. This is one of the main reasons why you want to subsume detail in your paintings, except for strategic areas. And I'm always interested to see people come into my studio and say, oh, your paintings are so detailed. Isn't there not? I mean, you go look at this painting and see where's, all the shapes you see are big shapes, and they're not detailed in the slightest. What people are seeing as detail is actually what I would call texture. And more and more I like to keep those larger shapes large and do some color modulations in them, and then modulations of texture, especially at the edges, that kind of break things up and create a nice fracture. I've really been into, and sort of even obsessed, I'd say, with that is in the last year, since I completed the 100 days, and we're actually coming up upon the time right now where I would have finished that 100 days of tonalism paintings, and I actually exhibited them here in Fongaray last year. I think it was in August, but it could have been in July. Actually, this blog itself is probably coming up upon its 1 year anniversary. It's not the first blog I've done, but probably the one I've stuck with the longest and most consistently. And we're at like 14,000 hits right now, which I think is pretty good. Considering I don't really advertise it anywhere, people just kind of have to stumble on it. Anyway, you can see we're getting close to the end here. If you'd like to see more of my work, go to landscapepainter.co.nz. I'll be back next week with a larger version of this. Meanwhile, take good care and stay out of trouble.